Well, good morning. And first of all, it's great to be here with you. And it was great to be with the president yesterday. He really likes to be out on the road connecting with workers. We had over 1,000 workers with him yesterday, talking with him about the importance of tax reform. And as you know, this is about a middle-income tax cut, and it's also about making business taxes competitive. And as the president said yesterday, there's over 30 million small businesses as pass-throughs that are going to have their lowest tax rate since 1931. So this is about making American business competitive and passing on those benefits to workers.
But already, I don't know, I think it was LA Times or something, that there's already pushback on the 20%. It's going to end up at 22 or 23. Do you think if you could get 52, or if you could get, I don't know, Cruz and Corker and Rand Paul, if you could get everyone and it was 23, would the president accept that, do you think?
The president's made it clear that he wants 20%. That's the one part of this bill that's not negotiable. We want 20% on corporate taxes. That's what we need to make America competitive.
Are you hearing from, continuing to hear from blue state Republicans that it's a no-go for the state and local deductions?
Well, that's one of the issues that people talk about, and I understand that issue very well. As I've said before, I've lived in New York and California. I understand the issue. We're sensitive to that issue, and that's why we're still discussing where we set the top rate. But the idea is, you know, again, we don't want this to hurt New York and California and New Jersey and Connecticut and Illinois too much. But on the other hand, we can't have the federal government continue to subsidize the states. And that's a major loophole that we're trying to close in simplifying taxes.
Just one more, and then I'll let you go. And the dynamic aspect of it, Mr. Treasury Secretary, as you said, it's going to pay for itself. But the reality is, the gentlemen I mentioned, the senators I mentioned, whether it be Corker, which, you know, there's been other stories swirling around about Senator Corker, obviously, and he's not running for re-election. But you've got other real deficit hawks, whether it's Rand Paul or Ted Cruz. Is there a number that you think that they'll accept in terms of if it's not paid for? Is there a number of dynamic assumptions of revenue growth that above which they won't go? I mean, I don't know if they think the whole thing will pay for itself if it's $2 trillion or $3 trillion. Do you know have you talked to them on what they'll sign on for? Do you know what that number is?
I have talked with them, and in particular, I would signal out Senator Corker, who's been enormously helpful in this process. Him and Toomey were helpful in negotiating the agreement to get this out of the Senate committee and get it down to the floor, and they agreed on the $1.5 trillion static number. And I've said the $1.5 trillion, I want to make sure people understand the math. There's about a $500 million difference between baseline and policy. We think we should score it to policy. So that takes the number down to $1 trillion. We believe there's $2 trillion worth of growth that will take this to $1 trillion positive. But even if you don't believe that, you only need about 4 or 5/10 of GDP to get this to break even. So, you know, the senators understand this math. We've been having discussions with all of them. The president is having been discussions with them, and we're confident this is going to get done.
Mr. Secretary, wanted to go back to just the state and local deduction issue, just try to understand. I know you're trying to work on it. Just even give us a framework of what kind of fixes there could be if you don't want to hurt New York and California. And you talked about not wanting to subsidize New York and California and other states like it. It is worth noting that New York and California and about 11 other states pay more into the federal government in taxes than they receive in a meaningful way.
You know, I've heard that statistic, but that's because a lot of rich people live in New York and California, and they pay higher taxes. So, you know, as I said, I've lived in New York and California, and I'm sympathetic to that argument. But that's as much because of the demographics of where wealthy people live than anything else.
Mr. Secretary, back again to this idea of who the tax break's going to go to. We know that the middle class is who you've said you're targeting. The idea of $4,000 going to the average family is the one that the president's been talking about, and Kevin Hassett, who we spoke with yesterday. But there is this idea that if you're going to have a large, substantial tax cut that goes through, it's automatically going to go to the people at the top because they're the ones who are paying taxes at this point. There's even a former Obama administration official who was saying, look, the only way that this can happen is it's basically impossible to have a large tax cut that doesn't involve most of the benefits going to the high income agenda, because that's who pays taxes now. If you consider that the top 0.1% of taxpayers pay more than the bottom 80%, how do you kind of make that add up? And again, I realize we don't know all the details yet. It's people trying to figure this out around the edges.
Well, obviously, if we cut taxes and the high end pays the majority of the taxes, they're going to get some relief as well. We're talking about on a relative basis where the relief goes. And what we're focused on, as I said, and we're working through the details. So the details are very important. The Ways and Means Committee is having listening sessions. They're developing some of the details. As I've mentioned before, we have over a staff of 100 here in Treasury that's working with the House and the Senate. But that's what we're focused on. And I think what the president did a great job yesterday is connecting that business tax reform is about helping workers. And I think you heard specifics of people in the crowd with businesses and what it'll do. Kevin Hassett at the CEA, the Council of Economic Advisors, has done a lot of research in helping us in focusing on that $4,000 number. We're trying to make American business competitive, and that's good for American workers who have not had any real increases in wages.
Hey, Mr. Treasury Secretary, just so we get it out before we talk more about taxes. Number one, you confirm that Powell is your preferred choice for the next Federal Reserve chairman, or even if we just assume it's true, what qualities of Jerome Powell, what does he bring to the table that you might find attractive as the next Fed chief?
You know, I give you guys a lot of credit because every time I come on this show, you ask me the same questions and I'll answer them the same way, which is...
That was a different question, I think.
I'm pleased. You always ask me about the Fed chair. I'm pleased to be meeting with people, with the president. It's the president's decision, but I am participating with him.
Okay.
There's been no decisions made, and it would be inappropriate for me to comment on any of the people that are being considered one way or another. But I give you guys credit for trying.
Okay. When do you expect we might actually hear a choice for the next Fed president?
I think given the timing of this, this is something that the president is focused on, trying to make a decision in the next month, although we don't have a specific deadline. Okay.
Mr. Secretary, I wanted to ask you about the estate tax. We have talked about that before, but try to understand this. Is removing the estate tax a philosophical driven by a philosophy or driven by economics, and trying to understand how you believe it would help middle-class workers, recognizing that, at least according to the Tax Policy Center, only roughly 50 small farm and business estates will owe any estate tax in 2017, and according to them, most of them have sufficient liquid assets to pay the tax already without selling a farm.
Well, I think it is both a philosophy and it is economics. And I mean, I can tell you, we've literally met with hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of small business owners during the campaign and in the last year with the president, of people who pay estate taxes and have problems passing on their business, whether it's farms or small businesses. But there is also the philosophical issue that we tax people during their lifetime, and should there be another tax at death?
Right. Right. You work your entire life, and they let you keep it. I don't know. The whole idea is that it almost sounds confiscatory. It's like the government has somehow they've allowed you to keep half, and now you should feel grateful for that, and then they're going to take another half. It's I don't understand, since it's your money to start with, and that I don't think the forefathers really thought of it that way, but I don't know. Philosophically, it's a big deal.
Well, no, the reason I ask is, I think that piece of it's less. My personal view, that's driven less by the middle class. I agree, but just in terms of property rights, it makes I don't know. It just makes
well, one of the things it would also do is a lot of people also hold unproductive assets throughout their life, waiting until they die, and if you get rid of the estate tax, it will take care of that issue.
Is the AMT still gone?
It is indeed, but the AMT is offset with lots of other deductions that get eliminated.
And any new info you can give us on the pass-through issue?
The pass-through issue, look, it's, as I said, 25% rate, lowest rate in over 80 years, back to 1931.
But you had said you were trying to put some guardrails around it so people wouldn't be able to abuse it.
We will definitely have guardrails around it so it can't be abused. I assure you of that.
Mr. Secretary, thanks. I'm already starting on my Fed chief question for next time. It's going to be even a different way that I phrase it, and I'm going to get you next time. Anyway, thank you. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for being on this morning.
Hey there, thanks for checking out CNBC on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on all of the day's biggest stories. You can also click on any of the videos around me to watch the latest from CNBC. Thanks for watching.